Yo, what is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. It's the one himself, the chosen one himself, Go to J-Lo, and I'm back with another video, man. Today, we got top 10 dirtiest players in NBA history. Now, I expect to see none but some... Hey, you already know how it go, bro. You just gonna see none but niggas catching bodies. But anyways, y'all, I ain't gonna talk too much, man. Let's get right into this video, bro. As usual.
Jalen Rose often says that NBA players fall into two categories: those who are in the league because of their skill and those who got there for their will. Every team needs guys that will get points and assists, but you also need to have dogs on your team. Guys who will be relentless on the court and bring the warrior mentality, and occasionally make a hard foul. In this video, we'll discuss the second category and those players who were...
Hey, this how you know, well, ain't got no game for it. If you always got to hustle and shit like Dennis Rodman, throw your body.
famous
for
getting their hands dirty. Here are the dirtiest players in NBA history. Bill Laimbeer. If there was a poll with a knowledgeable and unbiased NBA audience, and the question was asked, who's the dirtiest player in NBA history? I'm willing to bet a large amount of money that Bill Laimbeer would get the most votes. Laimbeer is one of the main reasons why the 80s Pistons were called the Bad Boys, and he is still probably an unwelcome guest in Boston and Chicago. Even though I missed the physicality in the NBA game today, what the Bad Boys represented was another extreme. And Bill Laimbeer was at the forefront of everything, together with teammate Rick Mahorn, who was not on the list, but definitely deserves a mention.
Nah, he need to be on the list.
Punching and starting fights was a daily routine for Laimbeer, and so was flopping and acting all innocent in front of the refs. You could make the counter argument that the whole 80s era was full of hard fouls and fights on the court.
Bro, he had his thing like locked and loaded, bro. He was ready to swing on his dude. Just look at how far he had that joint cocked back.
That the whole 80s era was full of hard...
Bro, he already in fighting stance and everything. Laimbeer walking up. Huh? He walking up like, what I do?
Fouls and fights
like,
on the
boy,
court,
you know what you did?
Correct. However, Laimbeer and the Bad Boys were doing the heavy lifting for that image of the 80s basketball. It's not a surprise that most players would turn their ankles against Detroit in their center, who often planted his feet deliberately in the place where his opponent would land. Larry Bird said he had many rivals on the court and that he would warmly greet all of them today, except Laimbeer, whom he called a dirty player who tried to injure people on the court, which went above and beyond the usual basketball roughness. Charles Oakley.
I knew he was going to be on this joint. Oakley
was an instigator, an enforcer, and a man whose skills would have easily translated to the MMA octagon. Michael Jordan hated when Oakley got traded to the Knicks because he was his biggest insurance against the cheap shots from the Bad Boy Pistons, who really beat the hell out of Jordan in those years Oakley wasn't there. However, Oakley is a skill, and even though he was never a great player, Oak's mentality kept him in the league for almost 20 years. Oakley played in the era where his skills and services were much needed, and he was probably the toughest guy to play in the NBA in the 90s, and nobody was trying to mess with him. He'll forever be remembered as a guy who'd get into fights in NBA games over his actual contribution to the game of basketball. But that's okay. He probably wouldn't have it any other way. Ron Artest. Like most of the players on this list, defense was the bread and butter for Ron Artest, who made 4 all-defensive teams, highlighted with the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2004. Great defense requires a lot of hustle, physicality, and throwing your body all over the floor, and Artest fit the requirements perfectly. And then some. He was no stranger to throwing punches and elbows, wrestling, and arguing with whoever was in his sight.
Gripped his whole head.
Over a dozen suspended elbows, wrestling.
Oh, like, bro, he got his shit like that.
And arguing with whoever was in his sight, which earned him over a dozen suspensions and numerous ejections throughout his career. Of course, the worst one of all was the malice at the Palace, when he entered the stands, fought several fans together with Steven Jackson in what was the biggest fiasco in NBA League history. In 2011, he legally changed his name to Meta World Peace.
Nah, that ain't safe, bro.
His name was an oxymoron. In the following season, he nearly took the head off James Harden's shoulders with a nasty elbow punch, which further cemented his reputation of being dirty.
Bro, he winded up. What Harden even do to deserve this, bro? Because that definitely was intentional.
A nasty elbow punch, which further cemented his reputation.
This the thumbnail right here. I ain't gonna lie.
Bruce Bowen. Bruce Bowen made his NBA bread by playing blue-collar defense and being tough as nails on the court. He averaged just 6 points, 2.8 rebounds, and 1.2 assists throughout his career, but his presence on the court was felt every game. He made the all-defensive team in each of his 8 seasons with the Spurs, where he spent the most fruitful years of his career. Bowen was the man who did all the dirty work for the team, which he admitted. I did a lot of dirty things, but it's all part of the sport. For example, although I am fully aware that it was wrong to hit Ray Allen in 2006, I admit that I did it fully consciously and intentionally. Bowen would often slide his feet under shooters' legs, so they would land badly and hurt their ankles.
Oh,
the same thing
no.
Zaza Pachulia did to Kawhi Leonard in 2017, after which the landing area rule was introduced. Bruce would also hold, grab, and punch the players he was guarding, and he was, for the most time, very successful at his job. Kobe Bryant said he was one of the toughest matchups for him, and Bowen was one of the main reasons the Spurs got past the Lakers and won the title in 2003. Draymond Green.
No, I knew his ass would be on the
Draymond Green is one of the most respected.
Hey, we gotta pull the joint up for Draymond Green, bro. Hold on, where Donkey at, bro, from Shrek? I gotta pull it up. I don't see no difference. I ain't gonna lie. I don't see not one difference.
Draymond Green. At the same time, Draymond Green is one of the most respected and most hated players in the NBA today. Draymond is a true leader and the heartbeat of the Warriors, who wouldn't be what they are without his defensive presence, toughness, and emotional leadership. Dre is one of the rare players with the 90s mentality, and the one player who is going to instigate things on the court, who will trash talk the whole opposing team, complain to the refs, and make a hard foul when necessary. And even though he is a very intelligent player who can pass and defend with the best of them, he's also the enforcer on the team, like Charles Oakley was for Jordan and the Knicks, or how Kendrick Perkins was for the Celtics and the Thunder. When an enforcer is on the team, there are much less hard fouls on star players, because the enforcer would punch you and fight you right back, eye for an eye. In Draymond's case, I wouldn't necessarily call him dirty per se, but I'll say that his pride, emotions, and competitiveness get the better of him sometimes.
Hard don't be on nothing, bro. How you just gonna
say that his pride,
you just gonna let the dude do that, then you gonna look
get the better of him sometimes.
You better defend
Steven
yourself,
Adams
man.
and LeBron's family Jules would surely agree with that, and so would some other players with whom Green's gotten into fights over the years. You may not like him and think he's the worst part of the boy band and that he gets drive-by panties meant for Justin Timberlake, but one thing is for sure, there ain't no one punking Draymond on the basketball court. Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman is one of the most underrated players of all time and is often perceived through painted hair, piercings, and the party animal side of him, rather than his stellar play and incredible intensity on the court, which didn't change from the moment he got to the league. Dennis was probably the most irritable guy who ever dribbled a basketball, and that's because he simply didn't care. He didn't care about points. He didn't care if he would get hurt or not, or what anybody would think of him.
Don't got the skills offensively, bro,
rebounding and
you better
defense,
play tough defense and hustle.
Things to perfection. Rodman
like, you
is,
gotta give your
without
body.
a doubt, the best rebounder who ever played and was a coach's dream on defense. Dennis would absolutely hound the opposing players, and because he was incredibly strong at 6'7", he guarded Michael Jordan and Shaq with the same vigor and same success. Rodman was a pest, and he'd never give up, and he gets under players' skin throughout the whole game. Because of his physicality and because he was always in everybody's face,
Rodman only do
his
the
opponents never really cared.
Snag. You know what I'm saying? They'll celebrate by the rebound.
Especially in later years when his public image dictated and carried some of the extravaganza on the court. John Stockton and Karl Malone. John Stockton looked like he was one of the nicest NBA players you'll ever meet. Soft-spoken, with his hair neatly combed, and his style resembling a guy that's about to sell you insurance. On the court, he was the exact opposite and one of the fiercest competitors. Multiple NBA legends call him a dirty player because he always took unnecessary cheap shots when the refs weren't looking. He was an absolute pain in the butt on the defensive end and would always guard his opponents extremely
let me see
close,
some of the evidence of this, though.
Which annoyed everybody he came across.
I don't agree with this. I see
and he
some.
was also a big flopper too and would play the refs like few other players in league history. Gary Payton said that Stockton, and not Michael Jordan, was the toughest player he ever played against. I have the greatest respect for him. I see him away from the floor. Love him. Great guy.
How you gonna say Stockton was the
court?
He's just hating because he lost to Jordan, right?
And when a mild-mannered Kerr says something like that, You better believe it. His Hall of Fame teammate Karl Malone was cut from the same cloth. There
I
hasn't
could
been a
believe
center
Karl.
or
Look.
power forward in the 90s that didn't get elbowed by Karl Malone at least once. If you were a guard, you'd get a healthy
I ain't
portion
gonna
of
lie.
punches or slams
If
to
I'm
the
in the NBA, bro, and dude just elbow me, I ain't gonna lie. I'm getting my get back, bro. Cause
floor if you were
ain't
trying
no
to
way
go
you
by
just
Big
finna just
Karl.
elbow me.
Just ask Isaiah
Look,
Thomas,
bro.
who received over 50
Bro,
if
he
you were trying
decking
to go by Big Karl.
them boys,
Just
bro.
ask Isaiah Thomas.
And he just flopped too. Let me stop rewinding, but he just flopped though. That don't look like he hit
40
him.
stitches after this gentle caress from Malone.
Gentle.
Kevin Garnett. KG is one of the most intense dudes, not only in basketball,
He's dirty
but
with
in
his
all
words,
sports.
not
His
his
maniacal preparation and
elbowing
approach to
people.
the game were not matched by many people, and he'll forever be remembered for his trash talking, fighting, headbutting the basket, as well as his Hall of Fame play on the court. If you were his teammate, you loved Garnett because you knew he was willing to die on the court. As an opponent, you hated him
This dude
because
crazy,
you knew
boy.
KG wanted to kill you. His mentor was Gary Payton, and he
Mentor?
passed on the gift of gab, defensive chops, and some other dirty tricks to his mentee, who didn't take long to become the meanest player in the NBA. Garnett would cuss you out just because you looked at him funny, and he'd also pass a few elbows, kicks, and punches along the way. Very few people had what it took to stay immune to his provocations, and you could count on the big ticket to have both verbal and physical altercations on the court. Dikembe Mutombo.
I'm surprised
Dikembe
with this one.
Mutombo was one of the biggest NBA sweethearts, if you
That's
meet
what I'm
him
saying.
on the floor. And he wasn't a dirty player intentionally, at least not like Bruce Bowen or Bill Laimbeer. However, Dikembe elbowed so many people that it's really hard to call it a coincidence. Mount Mutombo was one of the best defensive NBA players ever, and a
Someone
part of
Mount
his
Mutombo.
defensive strategy
Hey,
was
Jordan
to
taught
disable
Mount
his
Mutombo,
opponent.
though.
You know, if he can't play,
He gave him
he
the
can't
figure away,
score.
too.
ESPN made a list of over 25 injuries directly caused by Dikembe, which would be impressive if it weren't so bad. Rasheed Wallace. You can't become the all-time leader in technical fouls by being a saint on the court. Sheed was the main player of the famed Portland Jailblazers in the early 2000s, after which he proved to be the missing piece that would bring another title in Detroit. Sheed brought tremendous energy on the court, and he used it to trash talk and fight his opponents, argue with the fans and the referees, and he even found time to play a little basketball. If you asked him about his rough play, I'm guessing he'd just tell you that the ball don't lie, and that both teams played hard.
Hey, dude in the back got did dirty. I ain't gonna lie.
Tell you that the ball don't lie, and that both teams played hard.
Let's shoot though. Alright, man. Hope y'all enjoyed that video, man. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. I'm out.